A live picture of Key West, Florida, where Hurricane Helene is expected to make landfall in the Big Bend area this evening as a Cat 3 or Cat 4 storm. That image seems to be a little frozen there, but rest assured the surf is rough there. Parts of Florida under flood watches and warnings. Some areas could see storm surge reach as high as 20 feet. And we'll explain what you need to know about this massive hurricane. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Renee Chu.
I'm Chris Levin, in for Jeff Hogan. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the connection's spotty because of what's happening down there. Right now, the focus is on Florida, but Hurricane Helene will have severe effects on the North Carolina mountains. And we do have live team coverage of our state's preparations. Let's start with meteorologist Amy Wilmoth. Amy, where's Helene right now?
Still in the Gulf of Mexico, still churning over some very warm waters. And there's really nothing that's going to limit its capability to continue to increase in intensity. It continues to strengthen. It has winds at 105 miles per hour. And just look at how massive this system is. It spans about 900 miles wide. So this is a huge, huge storm that will have far-reaching impacts. The mountains are already getting some major flooding in the southern part of the mountains. As of 11 a.m., it had 105 mile per hour winds moving to the north-northeast at 14 miles per hour. We have tropical storm warnings still in place for part of the North Carolina mountains over to Charlotte. Hurricane warnings in the area that you see here. This storm is going to make landfall in Florida as we get into the late evening and nighttime hours, likely as a Category 3 or Category 4 hurricane. It's going to have major impacts on Florida and really across much of the southeast. Notice how narrow this track is. That's just where the center of circulation is going to go. But as I mentioned, it has huge impacts for hundreds of miles spanning the center of that circulation. Our local impacts, we could see 1 to 3 inches of rain, and that could lead to some flooding. We already have a saturated ground. Some tornadoes will be possible. 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts will be possible, and that could lead to some power outages. So we have a weather alert day for today, and that continues tomorrow. It's really tonight through Friday afternoon, and it's for everyone. It does include the entire area. A look at the radar right now. Things fairly quiet across our area, but we're now starting to get some showers in the southwestern part of the viewing area. Nothing severe, nothing like what they have in the mountains right now. Look at all the flash flood warnings that they have in the North Carolina mountains. And I did check with the National Weather Service. The Swannanoa River at Biltmore Village is expected to have a record high crest. That is going to have some huge implications for the southern part of the North Carolina mountains. And we do have some crews headed there, and we're going to have some live reports from the mountains later on today. There's the center of circulation down here, and just look at all of the rain. We also still have that stalled frontal boundary, so the mountains have been getting rain since yesterday. Tornado watches from Florida all the way into South Carolina at this point. Rainfall totals, they've already had 6 to 8 inches of rain in the last 24 hours in the area that you see right there in the North Carolina mountains. For us, we're expected to get about 1 to 3 inches. So heavy rain for the mountains through the day today. We'll have some scattered storms here as well later on this afternoon and this evening. Isolated tornadoes possible. A little bit of a break tonight, and then the heaviest rain and the strongest winds and maybe some isolated tornadoes come right during the morning commute. I'll have more on our local impacts, the specific wind impacts we'll have coming up in just a little bit.
Amy, thank you. Moments before this newscast, Governor Cooper gave a live update on efforts to keep North Carolinians safe. He already declared a state of emergency, activating swiftwater and urban rescue teams. WRAL's Laura Leslie was at the Emergency Operations Center for that news conference. She joins us live now. Laura, we understand the governor has also deployed 175 National Guard members.
That's right. You know, he's urging caution, especially for people who live in the foothills and the mountains as Helene gets closer to the state. And he said storms in the mountain require different emergency response resources, and he says those resources are ready to go. State leaders say 16 North Carolina swiftwater teams are stationed in potential danger areas. 3 more teams have been brought in from New York, Indiana, and Illinois through the state's mutual aid compact, so they're ready to go too. Also, 3 urban search and rescue task forces are activated to respond to landslides and structure damage that could be caused by Helene. In 2021, you might remember Tropical Storm Fred that caused historic flooding in western North Carolina, claimed 6 lives and destroyed or damaged more than 1,000 structures. Governor Roy Cooper said they're preparing for a similar outcome from Helene.
When tropical weather crosses into our mountains, it can be deadly. Just a few years ago, Tropical Storm Fred shocked our mountain regions with torrential rain, sweeping away homes, bridges, and lives. With Helene, this can happen again.
Cooper urged residents in western North Carolina to evacuate any areas that flooded last time. He said shelters are already open, in Avery, Buncombe, and McDowell counties, and they're prepared to open more shelters as the waters rise. He also said even here in the Triangle, already saturated soils will make power outages an even more prevalent problem. Laura Leslie, WRAL News, live in Raleigh.
And happening right now in the WRAL Live Center, we want to take you out live to Naples, Florida. This is on Florida's west coast. This is the Naples Pier. You can see a lot of people there enjoying the sights of the waves and the sunshine, but you can see just how big those waves are. Helene is right off the coast. We're learning that storm surge from Helene could be unsurvivable along Florida's west coast. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said in a storm briefing that northern Florida has not had a major hurricane hit in quite some time, and nobody in recent memory has seen a storm of this magnitude. This is going to be a very big storm. We're also learning today that Blue Ridge Parkway here in North Carolina has closed, saying these severe weather closures are full closures for all public use. The entirety of the parkway right now shut down.
Michelle, thank you. Helene's approach is unsettling for people who remember how the remnants of Tropical Storm Fred devastated western North Carolina in 2021. Laura talked about it. Let's show you. That storm caused deadly floods and mudslides in communities including Canton and Haywood County. WRAL's Chelsea Donovan is live with how swift water rescue teams are preparing to handle possible historic rain.
Yeah, just a few moments ago, Chris, about 30 firefighters, EMS, and rescue crews left this training center here near downtown Raleigh, and they're headed 6 hours west to Waynesville, that is in Haywood County. You can see one of the boat teams here is just getting ready to hit the road, heading that way where they will start their, necessary precautions and staging for the next week in that area. Now, we were there this morning as they loaded up their tractor trailers, their boats, and all of their tools and baggage for this 6-hour trip. They plan to stay a week, assisting with the local municipalities in structural rescues, but also water rescues if needed. Now, these teams are made up of Raleigh firefighters, Durham firefighters, and teams from Chapel Hill as well. They undergo extensive training for these types of disasters and realize that time is of the essence, especially in a mudslide or water rescue situation like we've seen in the western part of the state.
People, they may need medications, they may need food, and when they become isolated in an event such as a flood or a mudslide, it becomes very timely to access those people and evacuate them, and we have that capability to do that as well.
All right, you may remember Tropical Storm Fred that inundated the western part of our state 3 years ago. That's the last time that these teams deployed to that area, so they're going back again. And we should mention, these crews are incredibly self-sufficient. They're carrying their own meals, their water, medical assistance, as well as possibly sleeping in tents if they have to. Of course, we'll be following their journey and bringing the latest coming up at 4 on WRAL.com. Live in Raleigh, Chelsea Donovan, WRAL News.
And just a reminder, you can track severe weather anytime with the WRAL News app. It lets you watch the latest forecast and even check out the radar. Be sure to have the WRAL News app installed on your phone and turn on alerts to be notified about severe weather in your location. The WRAL News app is available for Apple and Android. What you're seeing on your screen right now are radar images of Hurricane Helene. 61 of Florida's 67 counties are under evacuation orders. Coastal waters are expected to continue to rise as the storm moves north.
People in the North Carolina mountains could face life-threatening flooding, but places like Asheville are already dealing with flooding. Those areas drenched with rain since last night, and it's still coming down. WRAL's Kat Campbell here now with where we're seeing the heaviest rain right now in the state.
Well, the good news is they're getting a brief break in Asheville. We're starting to see that band really shift east closer to Charlotte and parts of the foothills. But it's going to be a very active night as we see these bands continue to push to the north. And we're likely to see some more of this rain moving into the central part of the state and our viewing area as we head later into the evening. So for the evening commute, I do think that there will be some rain and perhaps some storms around the area. Hurricane Helene has a pretty clear-cut eye at this point. It's right around the eye, called the eye wall. firewall, where we expect to see those intense winds over 100 miles per hour. And once that eye crosses over Florida, likely this evening, probably between about 5 and 7 o'clock, that will be landfall. So we're watching this very closely. Here's the big setup. We've got Helene here. We also have a front here, and all this moisture from Helene is colliding with the front, and that's what brought the flooding to the mountains last night and this morning. The actual outer rain bands from Helene will make its way to the mountains tonight, as well as our viewing area. Hurricane Helene, check out the hurricane warning here in pink. It extends all the way into Georgia. That's pretty far inland for hurricane warnings to be extended, and that's just because it's going to be moving rather quickly, picking up that speed, and with the intense winds, it's probably still going to be a tropical storm as it crosses right over Atlanta. That's going to be around 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So big international air travel implications from Helene as well, expected to pretty much cross right over the airport and bring the potential of those very intense winds. Our local impacts from Helene: 1 to 3 inches of rain, a few tornadoes, and the threat of 30 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts. The timing of that could begin tonight, but it's really going to be first thing tomorrow morning through the afternoon. I would say the worst of this between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. tomorrow. And that includes all of central North Carolina. For these impacts, worst impacts will be felt in the western half of our state. We've got a lot we're going to be watching throughout the day on WRAL News as we start to see some of these rain bands move in. Be sure before you leave work that you check in on WRAL News at 4 to get a closer look at the radar, and check in with us tomorrow morning before you head out the door. Unfortunately, it does look like it'll be a pretty messy morning commute to start the day due to Helene tomorrow.
And happening right now in the WRAL Live Center, we want to show you this live look. This is Bluffs on Blue Ridge Parkway. We've learned in the past hour that Blue Ridge Parkway is actually shut down because of the impending storm. I'm seeing some ponding on the ground right now, nothing major yet, but we heard from Governor Cooper earlier. He says this is an unusually dangerous storm, and when tropical weather crosses into our mountain areas, it can turn deadly. So this is going to be a very powerful storm. Taking you over here, this is a live look in Naples, Florida. We're actually seeing a lot of surfers in the water here. You could see a lot of waves. Helene is actually right off the coast there, creating these waves. The FSU, we've also learned, has opened a refuge facility for off-campus students, and some students are choosing to go back on campus to ride out the storm. Storm surge in some parts of the Florida coast could reach up to 20 feet.
And you heard Michelle just talk about how Governor Roy Cooper held an emergency briefing on preparations for Hurricane Helene. He's already declared a state of emergency.
With Hurricane Helene, we have to be clear here. Heavy rains and winds are coming. Beware and prepare. Travel will be dangerous. Flooding is likely, and we are preparing for unexpected conditions.
Hang on now.
A foot of rain is expected in some areas, and that's why Cooper says the risk of flash flooding, landslides, debris slides, and slope failures should not be ignored. Power outages and tornadoes are also possible. Cooper says to prepare, everyone should actually tune into weather alerts today and through the weekend.
The governor also says the North Carolina State Emergency Operations Center is in communication with local leaders and emergency management teams. Cooper activated 175 soldiers from the North Carolina National Guard. Swift water rescue teams are deployed along with urban search and rescue teams. 30 firefighters, rescue and EMS crews from Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill left for Waynesville over in Haywood County this morning. You can watch the governor's entire briefing right now on WRAL.com. WRAL has you covered when it comes to tracking the severe weather. When we're not on air, you can track it all on the WRAL News app. Be sure you have the WRAL News app installed on your phone. Turn on alerts to get notified about severe weather in your location. It's available for free for Apple and Android devices.